Hey guys, before I start this video, I want to make a few quick announcements. So, if you want to just skip ahead to where I start doing my responses, that's fine. First, I'm very happy that I have 900 subscribers. Thank you so much, you guys. Hopefully I'll hit 1,000 soon, and that'll be... I'd never imagined I'd have this many subscribers, so thank you so much, you guys. The other thing is that a lot of people have been asking me to do a face reveal, and I'm really sorry, but I just can't do something like that at this time. I'm still under 18, I'm still living with my parents. You know, a lot of people in my area would probably be mad at me for my views on transgenderism and gender and whatnot. So I really don't feel comfortable putting my face out there. I know I've released other personal information about myself, but I really don't feel comfortable with that at this point. I don't know if I'm being irrational, but I am worried about anonymity. So I'm sorry, but I can't do this at this point, but probably when I get to college, I will start showing my face. But that probably won't be for another year or so. And then finally, I'd just like to say that I probably won't be uploading that much. I know I posted this on my previous video, but started getting sick a lot again, and I have to make up schoolwork. So yeah, I might have to take another break, or at the very least, I won't be uploading that much. Hey guys, while I was in the process of editing this video, I realized that I left out a couple of announcements, so just bear with me. Again, if you don't want to hear these, you can just skip. I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons on Patreon, who are Darwin Gray and Eddie D. Eddie D's channel is linked in my recommended channels, so go check them out. And thank you so much to both those people. And then also, I haven't been using it a lot, but I have an Ask FM, and I will try to start using it more, so I'll put that link in the description, and I'll also put my Twitter in the description, because I'm trying to use that more as well. I've had that up for a while, but I haven't used either my Ask FM or my Twitter a lot. But let's start getting the response videos. So a lot of people have been asking me to do a response to Ryan Cassata, who's a trans guy who's basically sold his soul out to BuzzFeed. He's done all this other crazy stuff. He's said a lot of crazy stuff. He's like a crazy SJW activist trans guy. So I'm going to do a response to a few of his videos. I'm going to do 3 of them all in one because his videos are very short. And I'm kind of going to go progressing from like the least cringy and awful to the most cringy and awful. So prepare yourselves, guys. It gets worse as I go along. So this first video is one that Ryan made pretty recently, I think about a week ago, where he says that he's a mental illness and he's talking about mental health advocacy. It's not that bad, but he does say some stuff that I do want to refute.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to share an article I wrote and explain that I have a mental illness, and I wanted to just bring some awareness to this to help other people. So here's my article. Ryan Cassata, I have a mental illness. My name is Ryan Cassata. I'm a singer-songwriter and public speaker on LGBTQ issues. I travel to high schools and colleges to share my story and to spread visibility. I play concerts and go on tour. I'm also a transgender man, and I use my experience to help others through speeches and YouTube videos. I also have a mental illness. My transgender identity is not a mental illness.
Right off the bat, he says something that he's basically trying to dismiss that gender dysphoria is a mental illness by saying his transgender identity is not a mental illness. And it's true that, yeah, being transgender in and of itself is not a mental illness, but in order to be transgender, you have to have the mental illness of gender dysphoria, and he's just kind of dismissing that. So that does make me a little angry. Now, you could argue that because there has been evidence that shows that gender dysphoria is linked to the brain structure, you could technically say it was more like a neurological or some other sort of physical disorder. But regardless, it still has psychological effects, and it's sort of like a blurry line onto whether it's a neurological condition or a mental illness. But pretty much most mental illnesses are linked to some problem with the brain structure or neurotransmitters. So it's like a really fine line, but it's fine calling it a mental illness, and that's currently what it's classified as. So, again, you're just dismissing that. You're dismissing the actual struggle with that condition. And you're saying, oh no, being transgender isn't a mental illness at all, because, like, I don't know if he's doing this intentionally. I don't think he necessarily is, but he's kind of dismissing the struggles of being transgender, of having gender dysphoria. Like, yeah, technically he's right. Being transgender in and of itself is not a mental illness, but having gender dysphoria is. So, don't know what you're trying to get at there, dude.
I'm not ready to say what I suffer with yet, but
notice that he uses the word suffer with to describe his experience of his mental illness. I know this doesn't seem significant right now, but keep that in mind because he's going to say some other stuff that kind of contradicts that.
I will tell you that I have a mental illness. The stigma is so bad that it feels impossible to disclose the exact diagnosis. Mental illness is very misunderstood and highly stigmatized in our society. This can lead to people being taken advantage of. So at this point, I've decided to not disclose my diagnosis.
Okay, dude, it's your personal decision whether to disclose your diagnosis or not. I understand if it's a personal issue for you, like you just don't feel comfortable sharing that. I understand if you're embarrassed to do that or you just don't want to do that because you feel like it's too personal. I understand that, man. But then you say you don't want to share your mental illness because of the stigma of society. I mean, yeah, obviously I understand that there's stigma associated with mental illness, but it's not like there's going to be some serious repercussion of it, dude. Like, it's not like anybody comes up and says to somebody, I have depression, and then they get beat up or something like that. Like, I understand there's stigma that you have to deal with, but it's not so bad that you wouldn't want to disclose or feel safe disclosing it. It's like, I don't really get that. I get if it's a personal issue for him. I don't get the whole stigma of society thing. Also, there's stigma associated with being trans, and why are you really open about that? It's almost like because mental illness is, for the most part, not considered cool in our society, but being transgender is, it's almost like he wants to disclose the cool part of his personal life, but not the bad part of his personal life. I don't know if I'm extrapolating here. Like, again, I respect his decision. I understand his decision. I don't understand the reason behind it is what I'm getting at.
I've been suffering for about 4 years with this illness. Sometimes it keeps me up at night. Sometimes it makes me cry for hours. Sometimes I can't focus or even have a normal day. There are days that I can't look people in the eyes or eat. Some days I just need my mom to calm me down. My family always worries about me, and I worry about myself. I've been stable for about a year now. I take medication, I go to therapy, I see a psychiatrist, I've changed my diet, I have a service dog, I take good care of myself. I've done nearly all I can to combat this mental illness.
Again, notice that he's talking about suffering with this mental illness, which I'm not saying that's not correct at all. Obviously, mental illnesses cause people to suffer. Obviously, he had to go through a lot to cope with it, and I respect him for doing that, because, a lot of people who are SJWs will either self-diagnose themselves with mental illness, or if they do actually have a mental illness, they won't seek treatment for it to look more like a victim. So I'm glad that he's seeking treatment for his issues. And again, I respect that. But keep that in mind. He says there's suffering. He's saying he has issues with it. Because what he says later in the video is really the part that made me want to respond to this.
My doctors tell me that there is no cure and there's no cure in sight. It's something that I will struggle with for the rest of my life, whether or not I am taking medication. That's just the way it is, and I'm okay with that for now. It's okay to have a mental illness. It doesn't make me less of a person than anyone else. It makes me have a different experience than most people.
I do partially agree with that. Obviously, having mental illness doesn't make you any less of a person. But saying that you have it's just a different experience, that's all it is. Like, this kind of reminds me of the differently abled argument. Like, you can't say that somebody's disabled, they have to be differently abled, because it's just different. It's just different. That's all it is. It's not any worse, it's just different. So, I'll try and share my own personal experience. I have gender dysphoria, and though I haven't been diagnosed with something specifically, I do have anxiety issues, and I think I may know what I have. Obviously, I'm not going to attach any labels because I haven't been diagnosed yet. I'm seeing a psychiatrist soon, but I haven't been diagnosed as of yet, so I'm just not giving labels because I don't know what I have yet for sure. My gender dysphoria and my anxiety issues, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Those are things that I struggle with almost every day. Those are things that constantly eat away at me. Those are things that just permeate my life, and they make things a lot worse. And even though I'm, currently transitioning, and I'm getting therapy to deal with my anxiety, and also to make sure that transitioning is going smoothly, it's still a struggle, it's still an issue, even when you do seek help for it. It's not just different. Like, I wish I didn't have those things. My life is objectively worse because of those things. And, it just seems so odd that he talks about his struggle and his strife with this, and then he just turns around and says, oh, I'm just different. That's it. No. Of course it doesn't make you any less of a person, but it's not just different, it's objectively bad. Okay, sorry, I just gotta calm down from this. And then, just one more thing before I continue with the video. He says he has a different experience from most people. Dude, 25% of Americans suffer from a mental illness. It's not some rare thing. It's extremely common. Yeah, technically it's different for most people, as in technically 3/4 of the population doesn't have a mental illness. But dude, it's like you're trying to make yourself look like a special snowflake. You're not, dude. Like, so many people have mental illnesses. So many people do. Especially, like, when it's genetic. Most members of my family have some sort of issues with anxiety. This just makes me so pissed off. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe it's just the wording of this. Maybe I'm just kind of nitpicking here. But dude, it gets worse. I promise you, it gets worse. So let's continue on. Sorry, I kind of ranted there.
I stopped feeling sorry for myself a long time ago. There's no room for that.
Okay, that's actually a good thing. That's like the greatest thing that you've said here. That you shouldn't feel sorry for yourself if you have issues. Obviously, your life is going to be hard if you have issues, but that doesn't mean you should feel sorry for yourself. That does nothing. In fact, that wears out people's patience with you. So I 100% agree with you with that. But how does that contrast with, oh, I'm just different than most people? Like, that almost makes yourself like you're sounding like a victim, and then you're saying, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. Again, maybe I'm just nitpicking here. I could be interpreting this completely wrong, but your whole narrative here is just not making sense, man. It's not.
I believe that God gave me this mental illness so that I could help other people with their struggles. It makes me relate to more people. It makes me more empathetic. I never really understood mental illness and the stigma that people face until I began having a similar struggle.
This is the part that made me angry. So, that first sentence here, I believe God gave me this mental illness. Okay, I'm not religious myself, but I understand that people use religion to cope, and sometimes if they're going through a struggle, they'll say, oh, God intended for it to be this way. And I understand, even though I don't personally believe that, I understand that if you want to cope, and that's like your emotional coping mechanism, I respect that, I understand that. But then the part about how it's made you nicer and more empathetic and more understanding. You just talked about your strife with this mental illness, man. I mean, yeah, maybe there's some negligible benefits, but then you're making it look like your mental illness is a good thing? What? I'm sorry, I'm really angry about this, and this is the most benign of his videos. Believe me. Like, what are you saying, man? What are you saying? You can't just talk about your strife with the mental illness and then just turn around and say, oh, this is a good thing, and I believe I was meant to have this. I understand that that's your coping mechanism, but you're really, really conflating things and just making... you're kind of downplaying the struggles. It's funny how you just stated what the struggles were in the first part of your video, then you go and you downplay them? Like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Again, maybe I'm misinterpreting this. I don't know if I'm just freaking out over this because this hits home for me or something. I don't know, so feel free to correct me if that's not what it is. But seriously, man, like, what?
It opened my mind much more than I ever would have imagined. It's opened a door for me to help other people. If you're going through a similar struggle, I understand. It's not something that you have to be ashamed of. It's something that you have to embrace and power through. If I can do it, so can you.
Okay. This is definitely the worst part of the video. This end part right here. I understand not being ashamed of having a mental illness. I understand that obviously you shouldn't be ashamed if you have a mental illness because you can't control that. But embracing it, being proud of it, being proud of, for example, for me, thinking out every single possible situation and how, like, thinking of everything that could go wrong and kind of being in a paralyzed state where you can't do anything because you're afraid of what will go wrong and because you're overwhelmed about all those thoughts buzzing around in your head. That's something I should be proud of. Waking up every day feeling like such a freak because I'm dysphoric about my body, that's something I should be proud of. And that's something that you don't even consider a mental illness, man. That's something that you completely dismissed. Again, maybe it's just because this personally hits home for me, and I'm sure it hits home for a lot of other people because so many people have a mental illness. But I should embrace that stuff? I have no words for you. You talk about the struggle of mental illness, then you talk about the good that it's brought you, then you say they should embrace it and be proud of it? That just makes me so angry. I mean, if that's your coping mechanism, whatever, man. But the fact that you're encouraging other people to do this, to basically downplay their struggles, especially when it comes to transgenderism, I'm sorry. Like I said, this is the most benign of his videos, but this is probably the one that's one of the more personal for me. So let's just get through the rest of this cancer.
My mental illness doesn't stop me from reaching for or achieving my dreams. I still give public speeches, play shows, and educate others. I even wrote a book that will be published someday. I'm privileged enough to go to therapy and have support from family and friends. If I didn't have that support, I would most likely be another statistic on the streets. If you don't have support from your family, there are still other options. You can contact your local LGBTQ center. There's crisis centers you go to. There's hotlines to call. There's groups to go to. There's always someone that will be a listening ear. Do whatever you can to not let it interfere with you achieving your dreams. Just remember, don't ever be ashamed to reach out for help.
Okay, so I have very little to say about what he said at the end of the video because he was pretty much completely correct with that. The only thing that confused me was he said you can contact your local LGBT center, but you're talking about mental illness, man. Like, is he just assuming that all of his audience is LGBT? I can understand if a majority of his audience is, because that is the subjects that he talks about. But you're talking about mental illness, and you're almost implying, like, being LGBT is a mental illness. Which it isn't, except gender dysphoria is a mental illness, but that video pissed me off. And I'm sorry, like, I got overly emotional about it. Like, that's just something that's personal for me, because I have pretty moderate struggles with both gender dysphoria and anxiety. Like I said, I haven't been diagnosed with a specific anxiety disorder yet. That was just my personal thing with it. Like, I'm sorry if I got overly charged about that. My point is, the stuff that he said at the beginning of the video and the end of the video wasn't that bad. What he said in the middle of the video there about, like, the good parts of mental illness and, like, embracing it. Dude, you're telling other people to do this. How is it gonna help them? So, sorry this video made me so angry. It gets worse. There's another video, which I'm gonna play now.
Hi everyone, this is Ryan Cassata, and this video is about bathrooms. So, there's a lot of conversation about which bathroom transgender people should use. I'll tell you right now, transgender people should use whatever bathroom they feel comfortable using. And also, I want to use this video as a call for gender-neutral bathrooms.
Okay, he talked kind of fast there. It might have been hard to catch all of that. The first thing is that he says that transgender people should use any bathroom they feel comfortable using. And I would say, for the most part, yeah, that's true. But only for transgender people who can pass as the opposite sex. Because, I mean, it's a shame that some transgender people can't pass. That's unfortunate, and that's nobody's fault, and I'm not trying to shame anyone for that. But it's still inappropriate to have a transgender woman who doesn't pass going in the women's bathroom, or a transgender man who doesn't pass going in the men's bathroom. It's not that big of an issue, especially because transgender people are such a small minority of the population, but it still is weird to have someone who looks male going in the female room or someone who looks female going in the male room. Now, of course, I'm not going to bring up the whole argument, oh, people are going to get raped in the bathrooms, because honestly, that's not that valid of an argument. Predators are going to be predators no matter what. I don't think bathroom laws or any sort of thing to do with bathrooms is going to stop that. But still, I don't think it's appropriate that transgender women who don't pass go in the women's room, or transgender men who don't pass going in the men's room. And I'm not saying that they should go to the bathroom of the sex they were born as, either. I do think gender-neutral bathrooms would be a good option in that case. In fact, I'm perfectly fine with gender-neutral bathrooms. I don't care if you made them all gender-neutral. I don't care if you have, like, a men's, a women's, and a gender-neutral one for either transgender people who don't necessarily pass, or something else, like maybe a disabled person needs help going to the bathroom, and their aid is of the opposite sex, or if, like, a mother and her children going in there. I'm fine with gender-neutral bathrooms, and I think they would provide a solution in the case of transgender people who don't pass. But he's saying that there needs to be a call for gender-neutral bathrooms. In other words, we absolutely need gender-neutral bathrooms, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think we need gender-neutral bathrooms. They're not an absolute necessity. They definitely would help in a lot of cases, but I don't think they should be enforced.
Single-stall, gender-neutral bathrooms are the safest type of bathrooms, and they are the most comfortable type of bathroom for me, and I know for many other people. So if you own a business, run a business, or have a venue of any type, consider having gender-neutral bathrooms, because it could save a transgender person's life. Let's be honest right here.
Okay, there's a lot that he said. He said if you own some sort of establishment, some sort of business, consider getting a gender-neutral bathroom. And I think that's perfectly fine. You're not enforcing it on people. You're not making them do it. you just asked if they should consider it, which probably not every business can, because it probably costs a lot of money. Anyway, I do have a problem with some of the other stuff that he said. He said that gender-neutral bathrooms are the safest sort of bathroom, and that they are the ones that he is most comfortable with. Okay, so I understand if he's most comfortable with it, especially since he's on testosterone, he doesn't necessarily pass, and so it might be just better for him to go to a gender-neutral bathroom, and that's fine. But safest? Like, what's the danger of being in a bathroom? This is ironically very similar to the whole raping people in bathrooms argument. Like, yes, of course, there are going to be some predators, and there are probably some pretty rare cases of people stalking people, or, like, looking at people in the bathroom, or even sexually assaulting or raping people in the bathrooms. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. That is rather rare. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. However, I don't think it's a valid argument. And similarly, whatever he's implying, and like he said that it might save a transgender person's life if you get a gender-neutral bathroom. I haven't exactly heard of transgender people being killed in bathrooms. I think that's pretty rare too. In fact, it might even be rarer than the whole rape in bathrooms thing. There's just hysteria on both sides of this issue, and it really irritates me because neither of the hysteria is correct. If transgender people who pass as the opposite sex go into the bathroom of the sex they're transitioning to, there's not going to be any problems. It's not like they're going to rape people. There's not going to be anyone who would necessarily use the disguise of transgenderism to rape people. I haven't really heard of that. And even so, like, they're still going to rape people regardless. Basically, what the no transgender people shouldn't be allowed in the bathrooms of the sex they're transitioning to argument boils down to people are going to get raped in bathrooms. The transgender people should absolutely be allowed in the bathrooms of the sex they're transitioning to, even if they don't look like that sex. Argument is people are going to be beat up and killed in bathrooms. And that's not a valid argument. That's hysteria on both sides. And by the way, I would ask for both the people who are going on with the rape hysteria and the people who are going on with the beating up, hate crimes, murder, whatever hysteria, who do they think are going to be the perpetrators of the crime? And who are going to be the victims? I bet you anything that they think the perpetrators are going to be men, and the victims are going to mostly be women. Funny how they never talk about it the other way around. Funny how the people who are like, oh, people are going to pretend to be trans women and rape women in bathrooms. Funny how they don't talk about people pretending to be trans men raping men. Funny how they don't talk about women beating up transgender people in bathrooms. Funny how that works. Just a little hypocrisy on both sides. So like I said, I don't agree with either side. I think either side of the argument, at least in terms of the rape hysteria and the hate crime murder hysteria, I think both of that is ridiculous. I think that the rule should be, if you can pass as a female, you should go in the female's room. If you can pass as a male, you should go in the male's bathroom. If you're having trouble with passing and you look kind of confusing, then yes, gender-neutral bathrooms are helpful for that. Or disabled bathrooms or something to that equivalent.